Hi everybody. Today I'd like to show you the parts that we're going to use to install the MyLink into your non-MyLink equipped Chevy Cruze. We got four major components to the kit. We have our main harness, we have a USB cable, we have a screen to radio connector, and we have a cable here that replaces the PDI-M module. Now let's get into the video and show you how this all goes into your car. Start is we're going to take the glove compartment door off because we're going to need to get behind there to access the OnStar module. So just open her up. Side here of the glove box, so it doesn't slam back up. Just kind of pull that out, and then you can let the string go. Squeeze on the sides of the glove box. Box will roll down and it'll roll out of the way. Two 7mm head screws, one here and one over here. Those out of there. I've already loosened them up here to speed it up a little bit. That'll come down. Make sure that one down, and then that panel will just clear. Okay, next will be to take the lower airbag assembly off. We're just going to unscrew the bolts and let it hang there. The battery has already been disconnected and you're not disconnecting it. We're not doing anything there, so there really is nothing to be afraid of there. There is two 10mm headed bolts. I've already taken one out just to speed up the process, but you'll see them. There's one about right here and one about here. Let me get this one out. That comes out. Now the airbag simply just pulls straight back. There's a little retainer clip on the side. It'll snap. Same over here. Pull it back. Pull it back and just let it hang there out of the way. Next is you're going to want to take off the side panel off the side of the dashboard here. Just use a little plastic pry tool and get that off, and you're good to go. Now we need to take off the sill plate here on the passenger side because we need to take this piece of trim out that's around where the glove box closes. So this is just a pull up. Pull up and it pops right out. Okay, now to get this piece off, there is a total of 6 screws. We got one here, here, on the side here. I've already loosened this one up just to speed it up again. Got one down here, one in the middle, and then one over here. Take these 6 7mm aside. Now once those are all loose, this thing just pops right off, just like so. Okay, with that big panel out of the way, now we're looking at the OnStar module, and it's facing the way that we don't need it to be facing because we need to access the plug, which is on the back side. So we need to move it out of the way. There's 3 screws that hold in the OnStar module bracket. There's one up here, one here, and then one here. Again, 7mm. Let's pop those out. All right, with those 3 screws out, then we can loosen up the OnStar module bracket. It'll just slide out. There's a bracket up on top, like this one is getting stuck on it, but just give it a little pull and lower your OnStar module. So we just have to access the plugs back here. So you can just kind of twist it around, and we're going to be working on the smaller of the 2 plugs. You can see there's a larger plug on here and a bigger one. It's going to be the smaller. Unplug that. Now this is the connector we're going to be working with into it. So for right now at this point, we're just going to leave this and we're going to get the radio assembly out of the car, and then we'll start running the harness. Alright, now we'll take off the trim here. Start up here. Just use a plastic pry tool again. Just be gentle, you don't want to scratch into your trim. Just loosen that up and slide that up there. That's that piece. Alright. Your next piece to take off is this lower trim piece. Up. Just kind of lift up on there, work your way around. It'll be the same if you have a stick shift as well. You just move that out of the way. We do need to take out this little compartment tray right here. So there's 2 screws that hold that in. Down there. And then just move that out of the way. Alright, next we'll get the controller assembly out of here. There's going to be four screws again for the 7mm. I've already loosened these up. Here's the way. Now with those screws out, again, that'll just snap back like so. All right, and there's the back. There's the back of that assembly. We can honestly, you can disconnect it, or we can just fold it out of the way right there. We're not doing any wiring with this portion of it, so it's fine just to leave it sit. Okay, there is a PDI-M module, which in your car now is responsible for interfacing the USB and the auxiliary input jack. The MyLink communicates with it a different way. So on the harness kit included, you'll see that there is a black 20-pin plug with a single green wire that we need to wire in. That actually replaces the PDI-M module. So the PDI-M module can stay in the car, but we do have to access the plug. So to do that, once you get the control panel out of the way, as we just did, there's the AC control module assembly. It's right here. It's just held in with 4 clips, spring clips. You literally just push it up, and you can just, there's two connectors, a brown and a black. Just the tab, and you can pull that out of the way. Now, the reason we take that out, the PDI-M's right here. But all right, now we can take the PDI-M module, which is here. You'll see there's 2 little release tabs, this little plastic tabs. You just push down on those while you're pushing the PDI-M module from the back side, and you'll see it just slides forward. All right. Now we got that out of the way. You just got to give it a twist and wiggle, and it'll find its way up there. On the stick shifts, it's wide open down here. It's a little bit easier. The automatics, it's a little less space. But now you'll see there's the black plug, and as well as the USB plug. All right, we're going to disconnect both of those. Just press the tab, pull it out. And, oh, that wasn't in very tight. There is a release tab on the USB. You just push down on it, and then it'll come right. The next thing is going to be the screen assembly. So we're going to take out these 2 screws right here, and we'll get the control assembly out of the way. Okay. All right, got those 2 screws out. Now this literally just pops right off. It's going to have the connector up here. We're going to be working with this one later because part of the harness goes in line with it. So there's a little blue clip on there, the safety clip. Just push that back, just depressing that gray, and then slide that out of the way. This will not be reused, but again, save it in case you ever want to put the stock stereo back in. Next will be the screen assembly, which is going to be the same. Remove the screws, and then that literally just pulls right out, just like that. Same thing on the back, just 1 plug. Remove that and just set that there. We're going to be plugging our harness in a little while in line, so just get it out of the way for now. All that's left is the radio. Pull out the 4 screws. All right, got the 4 screws pulled out. Now the radio will just slide out. Turn it around. This gets reused as well as your antenna ones do. All right, so the antennas, it's gonna be stuck on there a little bit. What you got to do is you got to push down on here. It helps while you're pushing on here. I'm sorry, I wish I had an extra hand right now, but kind of push down while you're pressing in the tab, and that'll help release it. But then squeeze it in, and it'll pop. The same, push, and antenna will pop. Now for the radio connector, you notice there's like a gate, I'll call it a handle on there. So you just depress the tab there, handle rolls back, and voila. Your radio is out of the car. Now it's time to put in the wiring. Okay, let's start with our PDI-M harness connector. That's just the single black plug with the green terminal, and we're going to end up putting this end of this green wire, the terminal, into the main plug of the radio harness assembly. So what we'll do is we'll route, this is where our PDI-M module was located before, kind of fish that through there to make it come out in the same general area as that. Leave that there for now. That fish through. Now we just take our original connector that was plugged into the PDI-M and plug them together here. Alright, and just snap it together. Now that's done. We have our USB cable extension here. So right now, remember, we had the cable that was plugged in the PDI-M module, the USB style. Now we have to make a connection, right to the back of the radio. So what we do here is take the this end of the cord right here, and we plug the two together. And when we plug the two together, if you look at it, you're like, how are those going to plug together? But they just go right together. Now what I like to do is, just to make sure that this connection can't come apart, is I'll take some electrical tape and I'll just wrap this up really well so it can't accidentally separate. And then once that is done, we can route the USB cable back through, like we did that green wire, and back up to follow the lead of the other green wire. Okay, we got that USB routed up there. You can see it's coming out here where the green is. That is all going to get connected on the back of the radio when it's time to put all that back in. Now it's time for the fun part, the main harness connection. So you can see on it here, I have the end with the 3 loose wires, and it's also similar in length to the RCA. So what I like to do is our radio connection is right here in the main hole, is basically we're just going to feed those through over here for now. Just to start the process. Alright, push that up. Now you see the gray plug, that's the new plug that goes in the back of the radio. Now we have an orange lead wire here as well. That's going to stay down here with this plug, and that's going to get added into this big connector as well as the green. So, okay, then we'll see on the harness where we have the match to, this is our original screen connector, and you can see on the new harness, we have the same one here. Well, we have the plug and play here, so one end will plug in there, this goes into the new screen, and the same at the gray. There was our gray from our control panel before, and we have the same on our harness right here, the gray and the gray. So now we just want to route those up to where they were and get them in the same vicinity as they were. So we're going to route those up, and I'll show you how that all looks here in a second. All right, I got those routed in. Let's do a little brief overview here. There's not a lot of room back here, so the gray comes out here in the center. So what I did is I routed it right through where the gray wire is coming through. Little trick, just pull down on the plastic when you're bringing the wire through. Now don't yank on these. I mean, yes, they're crimped, they're soldered, everything's good, but we don't want to use excessive force, pulling the harness through. So just pulling down on the plastic a little bit, it'll open up that hole a little better and allow it to come through. So you can see we just have the grays. Now the blacks I routed up here through the top, and now we're just going to plug everything in line. Now it kind of looks like before we started. We have the new harness with the new screen connector and the new gray coming out in the same locations. We got that new gray connector still hanging out, getting ready to get plugged in. USB is still there. Now what we're going to do is we're going to work on adding the yellow and the green wires. So we're working on this big radio connector. It's called the 44-pin connector. GM labels their connectors from the front side just as we're looking at it. So right now on this thing we can see how that release tab is up, and it starts from the right side and goes to the left. The top row is 1 through 14, and on the back side it actually is marked. There is some markings up here showing this is pin 1 and this is pin 14. So today we're going to be working with pins 11 and pins 43. Now the two terminals are actually different sizes, so you really can't put them in the wrong hole. I mean, you could put them in the wrong spot if you weren't in 11, like you put it in 10 by accident, but as far as their location goes, the green is going to go into pin number 11, which is going to be on the top row up here. So you just want to carefully count. We know that everything is labeled from the front side, so we're going to go, so in the back here, this upper one right here, where the screen wire is 14, 13, 12, 11. So we're going to be working there. Now for the bottom row, we can actually see, and this is pretty simple because it's actually marked right here, sorry, pin 44. It's right on the housing. That's where the red wire is. We're putting the white wire right next to that in pin 43. So in order to do this, first we have to release the lock assembly on here. Now on the sides, you can see there's this white face to the connector. Basically, we squeeze the sides of those and we pull the lock assembly forward. So I just literally squeeze both sides, and you can see how this now came forward. Now it's unlocked. Okay. If you don't do that, you can't put the pin into the plug. So let's start with the first one, which is going to be pin 11. Okay, so we're looking at this again. Remember, we're working from the top. That far left was pin 14, so we can cross that to the back. So my far left right there is that light green, which is 14. The brown is 13. There's going to be 2 spaces, 12 and 11. Now you can see where I have the green wire is in pin 11. So now you put that in and you push it in until you hear it click. Push it in until you hear that wire click, and then that one is in. Now we're going to do the same thing. We're going to put it in that pin 43, but now that's where the orange wire goes. So basically, let's get this connector turned around. Like we had mentioned earlier, this is right next to that red wire, which is pin 44, which is actually marked there. Put it in there and push it in until it clicks, and you'll feel it click too. It's not always the loudest, but you can feel it. Now once those are clicked, you try pulling on them, they're not going to come out, and snap your white face plug back on. If it doesn't go in, that means your pins aren't all the way in, so make sure that they're fully seated. Now we got that added. Let's go over to the OnStar area and let's get those wires added. All right, we're back over at that OnStar plug 12 pin. Now this one's actually labeled opposite of almost every GM plug. This one's left to right. So upper left, as you can see, the release tab is up is 1, and then the far upper is 6. In this one, we're going to be working with pins 5, 6, and 12. Pin 5 is going to be getting the white wire. Pin 6 is going to be getting the red wire, and pin 12 is going to be getting the black wire. Now this plug is a little different on how you release the safety lock assembly. I've included some illustrations with the paper instructions as well. There's a little, if you're looking at the bottom side of it, it looks like a puzzle piece. You actually just got to get a pick in there, and you have to release that safety tab. It barely comes up, maybe okay, we can see that literally is with the safety lock up. I mean, it's barely a 1/16 of an inch. So now we can insert our wires into the back side. So remember, all the pins are from the front. So top left is 1, far right is 6. We're working with pins 5, 6, and 12. This will all be in the written instructions as well. But white wire to 5, red in 6, and the black into pin number 12. Okay, I got those all added. So looking at it, we got the white in 5, red in 6, and black in pin 12. Now, now we push the lock back in, went flush. If that didn't push down, the pins weren't in, let's make sure they're all the way in. I have a lot of problems sometimes with the black wire going into pin 12. It likes to get hung up on the lock. This time it went in super smooth for me. But what I usually do in that situation is use the small pick tool you use to remove that lock and just kind of wiggle around the lock assembly while you push the black wire in, and then it'll go. It seems to get hung up on the lock assembly. But that's all done right there. We're we can plug this back into our OnStar module, and we're going to get this radio plugged in, tested, and it'll just be a matter of putting it back together, okay? All right, we got one more cable that we got to add, and that is the blue screen connector. It goes between the radio receiver and the screen. Now it'll come up where the screen was, so I'm going to kind of just mount that the same way that we did the other harness, and just bring it down to the radio assembly I have here is a non-navigation radio that I'm putting in this 2012 Cruze. Easiest way to tell if you're just looking at the radio is you'll see on the back there's just the two antenna ports, just like we had before. If you have a nav unit, there will be a third one that looks like this, but it'll be blue. I will be including this antenna assembly. Now this antenna doesn't have to mount on top of the dash, you actually mount it under the dash. So it'll simply, the blue plug will plug in the back of the radio, you route it around, and I just like to stick it up high underneath the dash on the passenger side. You can zip tie it to something, it's plenty strong, the signal will go right through the dashboard without a problem. But again, this is only if you're installing a navigation unit that you'll have to do this step. So let's get our radio plugged in. We have the original 43 pinner. We have the new where the gray connector was on the harness. We're going to have the end of the USB. Now the new USB cable doesn't snap per se into the radio, but it will slide in there and it will stay. It'll be just fine. And you connect your existing antenna ports, and there's also going to be the blue cable that is going to run between the screen assembly and between the radio and the screen assembly. Everything's hooked back up here. Remember when this one we had to release the lock earlier, put it in. When you're putting it in, it just snips closed. We got the blue. The ends are the same on both, so it doesn't matter which way you route that cable, but obviously we want the one coming out here. The new gray is in there. The USB port, you just plug in. The antenna cables, they're directional. You can't mess up which way they go. They just go click. You just kind of make sure your wiring looks good. I don't want any patch wires or anything. I do try to leave a little extra wire, obviously, to make it as easy as possible for everybody during the install. Just kind of guide it in there, and it should go right in with no force or anything. If it doesn't want to go, it means you're bound up on something and you want to take it back apart and see what's going on. So we got that in. Now we can put the screen in, the control assembly, and we're almost ready to fire this thing up. Okay, the radio's in, screen's in. I just wanted to remind everybody, make sure you put your AC control module in before you put the radio controller in, otherwise you'll be taking stuff back apart. Again, everything's marked on the back. Of the 4 connectors, we're only using the black and the brown, so they only go in one way. So plug those back in. This just snaps in, and then we'll put on the control screen. Okay, I have the majority of it put back together. I still don't have the area over here for the glove box, the airbag. That's still laying here, but what I did is I went ahead and I did reconnect the battery, because I want to try it. I don't want to get the whole thing put together and find out that it's not working or something like that. So this is a good time to do that. I got everything is fully plugged in, and it is ready to test. So when you first turn on your key for the first time, just turn it to the run position. Okay? Sometimes don't turn the key off, let the system load. You see the screen is still black, and there she comes. I have seen this take up to 30 seconds to load. Okay? The worst thing you can do at this point is turn that key off. If you turn that key off during that mode, sorry, I just turned the key off so you guys didn't have to listen to the chime. If you happen to turn the key off before you get that initial screen, the radio will become locked, and at that point it will have to be sent to either myself, if you had me program it, or to your programmer to have it unlocked. There is no way that it can be done. So very important, just don't do anything until that screen assembly comes to life. Once it does, you can start the car, get your AC running, whatever you want to do to try it out. So I'm going to go ahead and start the car up now. I got my screen So every time it loads, sometimes it'll load quick, sometimes it'll load slow. It just depends, but there it goes. We're good to go there. Let's wait for the main screen to come back up. And there we go. We've put a MyLink in. So I'm going to finish putting all the trim back in. I am going to disconnect the battery again when I put that airbag back in. Put it all back together. We'll do a quick little overview and we'll go from there. Okay, got everything put in. Everything is fully functional. One thing I didn't address earlier, and I left this panel off, the RCA cable ended up over by the OnStar module, and I just routed it down. It's right there in case you ever want to add a reverse camera. You just plug right into it. The radios, when you send them to me to have them programmed, when you put the car into reverse, the screen will change to a black screen. If it's a 14 or 15 radio you use, you will have these grid lines pop up. If it's a 13 radio, it'll just be a black screen. Put it back into park and the radio comes back on. That's pretty much it for installing the MyLink into the Cruze. I made it as plug and play as humanly possible. I hope you guys found this video helpful. If you have any questions, you have all my contact information. Thank you again.